Roger Stone is in studio with us for the rest of the hour. We'll also go to some of these callers holding at the bottom of the hour on their political correct stories. That ties into what he's been exposing. He's written the New York Times bestselling book, The Men Who Killed Kennedy. You probably heard of that. He's an alternative historian who was exposing just so many different events that have unfolded. I'm not going to go over his whole bio. He's also credited with the hardball tactics which resulted in closing down the Miami-Dade presidential recount. Stone is credited in HBO recent movie Recount 2000 with fomenting the so-called Brooks Brothers riot, in which a Republican mob swarmed the recount, demanding shutdown while thousands of Cuban Americans marched outside the courthouse. He also has worked around the world with pro-democracy, pro-American governments during elections. RogerStone.com, and I've met him and folks up in Dallas at some of the big JFK memorial events, like the 40th anniversary a few years ago. But the reason we got him in studio is I learned he was going to be down in Austin this week, and we already had an article back on November 3rd titled, Political Strategist, Hillary Clinton is an Abuser of Women and Girls. Now, I personally have interviewed women that Bill Clinton raped, and I mean women that Bill Clinton brutally raped and then settled out of court with. But the word is Hillary also has some of her own activities, but it's kind of like black unemployment doubling under Obama. They then put out all this pro-black rhetoric, but it's really the opposite. So we're going to be speaking to some of that today and really going over who is Hillary Clinton. Because even if you're a Democrat that identifies with her and thinks she's some wonderful, great saint, with the amount of dirt that is in her background, with the amount of dirt that's going on, it makes her extremely blackmailable. And so that's my biggest concern with Hillary, not just her saying we should look at Australian-style gun confiscation and things like that. And so, again, we also have the video of him with Larry King Live breaking that down on RT of all places. So thank you so much for coming in to join us today to break all this down. Roger Stone's our guest, RogerStone.com. Good to see you again, buddy.
Alex, great to see you. Thanks for having me.
You know I'm known for talking a lot, and I know a lot about Hillary and Bill, but you've written a book about it, and I read some stuff in your book that I didn't even know, but then I went and looked up. It turned out it was true. I mean, there's a lot of folks that have it out for women and like to target them. Most predators do for some reason, whereas most of us that aren't predators want to defend women and children. What's the Clintons' relationship with women?
Yeah, the point here, of course, is that the whole central narrative of her campaign is bogus. She is not an advocate for women and girls. She's an abuser of women and girls. Bill is not your roguish old uncle who just has an eye for the ladies. As you know, he's a serial sexual predator, very much like Bill Cosby. And the number of women that he has raped, bitten, sexually assaulted, abused, you know, I identified in this book 27 individual women. Now, some of these women's names, you know, Juanita Broderick, Paula Jones, Kathy Willey, but so many of the names you don't know: Christy Zurcher, Becky Brown, Carolyn Moffett, Helen Dowdy, Eileen Wellstone, Liz Ward Grayson. The list goes on and on and on. Now, some liberals try to say to me, well, what does that have to do with Hillary? Well, Hillary's the one who runs the cover-up. Hillary is the point person to silence these women, lest they get in the way of the Clintons' lust for power and wealth. Hillary's the one who hires the heavy-handed private detectives, Jack Palladino, Anthony Pellicano, Ivan Duda, who go out and run a veritable terror campaign to silence these women. So the notion that Hillary has somehow been an advocate for women, no, Bill rapes them physically, and then Hillary rapes them psychologically.
She's kind of a beard for his raping. She plays the part of, I'll never, you know, leave my man. I stand by my man. He's a good guy. She testifies for him. She defends him. She's an enabler.
Yeah, but it's worse than that, because it's not just that he can get away with it. It's that she ensures that there's no public exposure. This is why the famous feminist Camille Paglia says Hillary's a fraud. Her husband has degraded and exploited women. Or Joanne Vinocci, the feminist writer for the Boston Globe, the liberal newspaper, says that Bill Clinton should be held to the same standard as Bill Cosby.
From your research, deep research, because I know you've been on this for years, who's more of an abuser of women, Cosby or Clinton?
I think Clinton, because Cosby, you see, drugs them, whereas Clinton just uses brute force. Alex, I interviewed 3 women that he bit. He bites through the upper lip. It's kind of his signature. First of all, it's a disabling move because, of course, a woman then stops trying to cover
That's
her.
what a pit bull does.
Right. He tries to cover her mouth. And then secondarily, it's a not so subtle message to keep your mouth shut. So this guy is a criminal. He's a sex addict. He's a pedophile. The book goes way beyond this. We tie his epic drug use, the fact that he himself was a habitual user of cocaine, that he was in and out of drug rehab when he was governor, that he was involved, as you know, in the whole question of drug trafficking in and out of Arkansas, in connection with the Bushes, in connection with the Central Intelligence Agency. And when Dan Lassiter, the biggest drug dealer in Arkansas, when he was ultimately convicted of drug trafficking, he went out and got himself this really smart woman lawyer. Her name was Hillary Clinton. And she and her law partner, Vince Foster, why they arranged for Lassiter to get a full pardon from Governor Bill Clinton.
Wow. And then now today at a bigger scale, she heads up the State Department and gets billions of dollars brought into their foundation, hundreds of millions from dictators and people on lists that you can't sell weapons to, and then she waives that and lets the State Department give a green light to shipping weapons to countries in exchange for money. I mean, these people really are the criminal's criminal.
Yeah, look, the Clinton Foundation is not a foundation, and it's not a charity. It's two things. It's a slush fund for grifters. And secondarily, it's just a vehicle for the facilitation of massive bribes. So, for example, the country of Qatar wants to overthrow Gaddafi, who, although he's not a great guy, is an ally of the United States, is feeding us intelligence on al-Qaeda. They put $1.5 million in Bill's pocket for a 20-minute speech, bribe. They put $1 million in Hillary's pocket for a 20-minute speech, bribe. They put $2.5 million into the Clinton Foundation. At the same time, they're paying off Tony Blair in the UK and Sarkozy in France. And lo and behold, we topple Gaddafi, and women in Libya who under Gaddafi were allowed to vote, be educated, go outside without a veil, drive a car, choose their own husband. Women have been set back 200 years in Libya. They go from having the best quality of life in the continent of Africa to the worst. That's Hillary Clinton, the advocate for women.
It is like she's a wicked witch. I mean, it's not normally fair to just use analogies like that. I'll get you and your little dog, too. But everything she touches just gets destroyed. Everything she does is evil. And then her lies about being in combat, you know, being shot at when they landed in Serbia, none of it's true. Brian Williams loses his job over it, not her. How can she get away with so much?
It's amazing. So last week she comes out 2 weeks ago with a gun control proposal. And she says in it that if you have been accused of domestic abuse, you should not be allowed to own a gun. Well, under that circumstance, she wouldn't be allowed to own a gun because, as we prove in the book, she has kicked, bitten, scratched, slapped, and thrown hard objects at her husband. This is a woman with a volcanic temper, a foul mouth, very short-tempered, very, very greedy. This is someone who doesn't have the temperament to be president of the United States.
Well, as you know, it's been reported, I mean, from FBI agents and others that work in the White House, that she rolls on the floor and chews carpet. Only the person I know that does that was Hitler.
That's pretty amazing. Look, we do know this, that when she was in Arkansas attending to her sick father, and she learned that Bill Clinton was entertaining Barbara Streisand overnight at the White House, she flew back to Washington. The next day, he appeared with an enormous scratch across his face. D.D. Myers, the press secretary of the president, tried to say initially that he had cut himself shaving. She was forced to admit, no, Hillary had scratched him. So
was that because she wanted a piece of the action?
No, I think it was because he was humiliating her. You see, I think they have this weird dysfunctional sham relationship where Chelsea Clinton is not Bill's biological daughter.
Webster Hubble, right?
Webster Hubble. I document this in the book. Bill has a mixed-race African-American son in Arkansas, Danny Williams, without any question, the son of Bill Clinton and Bobby Ann Williams. Now, the Star magazine, the Star tabloid, wrote in '99 when Hillary was warming up for the Senate race that a DNA test had disproved that. I tracked this down. The Star was owned at that time by a man named Robert Altman. Altman headed the SEC under Bill Clinton, was forced to resign, major donor to the Clinton campaigns, Clinton Foundation, Clinton roommate at Georgetown. The new owners of the Star, American Media, they opened their files for me. Guess what?
They got hit with anthrax.
There is no DNA test. There never was.
Yeah.
But they tell us Black Lives Matter, Alex. Black Lives Matter unless you're Danny Williams, in which case they can just sweep you out into the carpet. So the Clintons, they lecture us about it takes a village to raise a kid. Why don't they step up and love, support, acknowledge, nurture their son, Danny Williams?
Well, because it doesn't fit into the larger narrative of where the Clintons even came from.
Yes.
I mean, we know Clinton's story, but what about Hillary? Digging into her, what are other little juicy tidbits in the book?
Well, we talk extensively. We examine the relationship between she and Huma Abedin. I mean, Huma Abedin is her parents and her brothers, of course, are active in the Muslim Brotherhood. She has a full security clearance and a full-time job at the State Department. She's the only woman in the history of the U.S. government to have a waiver that allows her to not only work full-time for the State Department, but also work for Teneo, which is a Clinton-connected lobbying firm that represents a number of Middle Eastern governments in front of the State Department, while she's triple-dipping and get a check out of the Clinton Foundation. When she travels with Hillary, they stay in the same room. We know this because I FOIA'd their travel schedules. And when we asked the State Department...
It really is amazing how much you ferreted out.
Yes. And when you ask the State Department, why is that? They say, well, Hillary has an acute health problem, and therefore she might need to be attended to in the night. Well, if she's got a health problem, we need to know that. Look, I spent 40 years in the corroded rectum of the two-party system. I worked for 3 Republican presidents. I was on 9 presidential campaigns, worked in the Senate, worked in the House. You know, the Bushes and the Clintons are in this together. That's the other thing in the book. We
Stay there. Really I want to break that down because you spill all the beans in this. That's all coming up. Stay with us. By the way, folks, Alex Jones here back live. Roger Stone's going to be on the Nightly News tonight, getting into even more, 7 o'clock Central. He was the chairman of Donald Trump's exploratory campaign previously when he thought about running for president. He was on the campaign until his book came out, and you know, he resigned himself. He talked to Trump this morning. So maybe we could pick your brain about Trump, but you were telling me off air, Trump's for real.
Oh, there's no question. Look, I don't agree with Trump on everything. We've been friends 37 years. I very strongly support him for president for one simple reason. You can't buy Trump. You can't bully Trump. He doesn't answer to Wall Street. He doesn't answer to lobbyists. He doesn't answer to special interests, not the Koch brothers, no one. Donald Trump is his own man. He'd be the first president we've had who would really work solely for the American people. And it's that incorruptibility. Plus, he's not afraid to take on, you know, unpopular, politically incorrect stances. He knows that there's something hinky about 9/11. He knows the immigration
system.
Well,
I know he's suddenly been saying stuff about it, freaking the Bushes out. You were telling me that you're educating him.
Well, he's a reader. The nice thing about Trump is that he's open-minded, and he was astounded by what he learned. That, as you know, Alex, that we had numerous warnings that this was going to happen that went completely unheeded. And it's just like the birther question. Trump fearlessly brought that into the mainstream. You and I knew it, but you couldn't get it on CBS or NBC or CNN or MSNBC. Trump is the guy who brought the whole question of Obama's birth and where he was really born into the political mainstream where people could consider it. And it's why he zoomed to the head of the polls 3 years ago. He should have challenged Mitt Romney then. I was in favor of going then. So I remain his strongest supporter and a close friend.
What do you expect the Clintons to do to try to come after him?
Well, they're already trying to spread this rumor that, you know, Donald was always in bed with organized crime. Let me tell you something. You cannot get a New Jersey casino control license and hold one for 13 years if you're in bed with the mob. It's just not possible. They have the most stringent laws. They put a proctoscope right up your derriere, and they look at every financial transaction in your entire life. Donald Trump is clean, and they got nothing on him. I mean...
Well, why would you want to be in bed with the mob? They take money from you anyways.
Well, I think the supposition is he's in the construction industry, he has to buy cement, he's in the Northeast, he knows guys who are Italian, therefore he must be mobbed up. It's a MacGuffin. It's bull. But they're going to try to smear him with that. That's coming. Wait and see. You're going to see it out of Politico. You're going to see it out of CNN. It's going to go nowhere. They don't have anything on him because what you see is what you get. That's the great thing about Trump. He is unscripted. He is uncoached. He is uncontrolled. He might say anything. I love the idea of a Hillary-Trump debate because he'll get right in her face on the drugs, on the misogyny, on the corruption, on the Clinton Foundation, on her covering up rape and the serial rape of her husband.
So he's going to really go after her.
I have no doubt about it. The guy's fearless. I mean, you've seen him. He's totally, completely fearless, and nobody can get to him. I mean, having worked in the Senate, having worked in the House, having been a heavy-duty lobbyist, I can tell you, for example, that every dollar of waste in the federal budget was put there by someone who wants it there. And that's the reason no one ever really cuts it.
Sure, it's their piece of the pie.
Right, they all talk about it. Trump would be immune to that. He would take an axe to the federal budget. So when the commentators say, oh, your tax cut plan on working people would cause a $1.5 trillion hole, why do you assume that Trump is going to cut the daylights out of federal spending? He would. And then when the lobbyists call and say, oh, you can't cut that, he would be immune to that. You can't get to Trump.
Well, here's the issue. As you know, if they keep ballooning things, it's all going to go bankrupt. We have to save the ship.
Right. Well, look, unless somebody gets serious about cutting federal spending, bringing back all the $2 trillion that's offshore and inversion, and actually negotiating a trade deal with the Chinese, the Mexicans, the Japanese, which is in our interest instead of giving away the store, you know, this country's headed to the toilet. You know that. Only Trump can save America, in my opinion, because he's independent of the Washington power structure.
This is a short segment. Long segment's coming up, but getting back into Hillary and things they might pull. I mean, it's bold for George Soros in the White House and Fast and Furious and the Kill the Cops movement and all that. I mean, they really are trying to destabilize this country. You've been an insider. You've seen it from all different perspectives. What do you think they're really trying, and are they being successful?
Well, I think we're in very perilous times. On the other hand, the liberty movement has never been stronger than it is today. There was a time we had one congressman. Now we have about 30. Thank God for the internet. Of course, the real reason they want to regulate the internet is to shut our communications down. If it weren't for people like you, and for that extent me, who are out there, you know, working to get out an alternative narrative, not only about our history, about what is happening today, we'd have no prospect at all. This is why I think Trump is striking the chord that he is, because he's not politically correct. He's willing to say things that need to be said in order to save the country. And I can just tell you, the power structure is going out of their mind. He vanquished Jeb. Now they're elevating Marco as the next puppet of the establishment, and Trump's prepared to devastate him too.
Wow. And I tell you, one thing's for sure, it's going to be very exciting times. We are not living in boring times. It is just explosive what's happening. We'll be back. By the way, they made the Missouri president step down for zero reason. They say he didn't follow the Black Lives Matter thing and turn the whole campus just into a mental illness fest. And so now, I said earlier this morning when he resigned, right when the show started, I said this will only encourage the mobs of politically correct mental patients. And now, this is up on Infowars.com, University of Missouri protesters clash with reporters, declared no media safe place. Because, again, there's no right to free speech of anybody else, just like the Yale footage of them screaming and they saying, shut up to the professor because he doesn't want to ban Halloween. This is about shutting down free speech in a climate of that. That's why at the new UN summit, this is mainstream news in Germany, we have it up on Infowars.com, they're openly talking about not letting you link to a website under copyright law, and that's what's in the TPP, and that's what Drudge was told by a Supreme Court justice earlier this year. And he came here to warn us just a month ago that they're coming next year for the free speech. So listen, it's all or nothing now. Because we're winning in the info war. We have the truth. We're telling the truth. We're promoting stuff that's popular. It's like oxygen in space. You got to have it. And the system doesn't like it. We're the real classical liberals that want lower taxes, private property, live your own life, live and let live. That's what they call extreme right-wing behavior today. No, it's not right-wing. It's not left-wing. It's what made this country great. People wanted to come here because of that. Speak of the devil. Hillary Clinton for prison shirts. We're only selling it, limited edition, through Christmas. And if you haven't gotten this for your friends and family, it just looks like a campaign shirt, Hillary for Prison 2016. And on the back, it says Legalize Freedom, Infowars.com. So you get the laugh. You educate somebody. She doesn't have many supporters, we found. In fact, everybody around here just gets beer bought for them at restaurants and dinner literally bought for them when you wear it. Joe Biggs and others have had that happen to them. But it's a great conversation starter. And then on the back say, hey, Infowars.com, Legalize Freedom. I want to give our guest, Roger Stone, this is great T-shirt because he gave me, you can go to rogerstone.com and get this bad baby and support what he's doing. The Clintons' War on Women, New York Times bestselling author. and then it's the cover of the book to get the word out and wear to her campaign events, because this woman has got to be stopped. And then,
I'm going to wear this tomorrow night in Dallas at my book signing.
That is awesome, my friend. And then the Clintons' War on Women, the new book, in bookstores everywhere, rogerstone.com. You need to get it. You need to send it to talk show hosts. You need to get it covered, because we may know that these are serial women abusers, but the general public still isn't really aware of it, because Gloria Steinem and others have been covering it up.
Yeah, the Clintons are moving heaven and earth to try to bury this book. Within hours of it being released 2 Tuesdays ago, I tracked an inordinate number of 1-star reviews on Amazon. One sentence: this book is crap. This book has all been discredited. This is the same old thing. Roger Stone's a right-wing hitman. I have my own IT people. They didn't take them long to track every one of those reviews to the exact same IP address. Where? The Clinton headquarters in Brooklyn, New York. And to their credit, when my lawyers contacted Amazon, they took those down. So, folks, if you read the book, if you like the book, do 2 things. Pass it on to another woman, because if every woman reads this book, Hillary Clinton will get no votes for women. And secondarily, if you like the book, go on Amazon, leave a favorable review. The book is this close to the New York Times bestseller list, and if it makes it, it's so much harder for the mainstream media to ignore what is the truth.
Well, you've got an average of 78% reviews, so their attacks aren't working too well.
Well, because we had a number of them removed, and our number therefore went up. I've never paid a person to go online. I don't organize people to go on, other than when I'm on radio, when I'm TV, on liberty-oriented outlets. I ask people, if you like the book, if you think we're striking a chord here, go on Amazon and let people know.
Well, we're in an info war, and it's not that the Republican Party's perfect either. You're about to expose the Bushes here. It's just that the system's scared of a patriot takeover of the Republican Party. That's our best avenue. There's a war going on right now.
No question.
And it's time to defeat all these rhinos. And I don't know if Trump's perfect. You know him. A lot of folks I know that know him behind the scenes say, no, he's the real deal. All I know is he isn't Hillary Clinton. And I'm not into lesser of two evils. She says she's coming for my guns. She says she's getting rid of the borders. She says families are basically bad. And I know what the Clintons have done to me personally with dirty tricks when he was president. I don't want to live under that again. So for me, this is personal as well. Get into Jeb Bush, because do you think he was ever really running against her? I mean, they're too tenacious and too arrogant to be a ringer for Hillary, right? But wouldn't he kind of de facto turn into a ringer for her?
Well, they're in business together. Look, the Clintons and the Bushes are constantly rehabilitating each other, complimenting each other, elevating each other. Several months ago, think about it, Alex, she was attacking Jeb. Why? She wanted to elevate him within the Republican contest. He was listing, and she needed to prop him up. I'll tell you what his job is: designated loser. That's his position. They know.
So he knows that.
Look, together they form a nonprofit. They raise $138 million for Haitian earthquake relief. They spend $10 million in Haiti. They pocket the other $128 million. They close the nonprofit and they answer no questions. This is the Bush-Clinton crime syndicate. In January, I have a book coming out called Jeb and the Bush Crime Family. You can go on Amazon and pre-order it right now. The entire arc of crime by the Bush family. Jeb, who was a drug dealer in his college and boarding room days, in his early business days in Houston and Miami. Prescott Bush, who made his money arming the Nazis, who made his money off slave labor in the steel.
He was actually their main lawyer in the U.S.
Yeah, and his bank was confiscated by the Truman administration.
Let me see that shirt. I'm going to fold it up for you.
For treasonous activity. George H.W. Bush, who only avoided indictment in the Iran-Contra matter because he stonewalled a special prosecutor and he wouldn't hand over documents. As you know, Alex, he's the one who oversaw the trafficking of millions of dollars worth of cocaine into the United States to illegally be sold and raise money for the Contras. And his partner in that, the governor they found who would let them ship the cocaine into his state and look the other way, Bill Clinton.
And I'm not giving Ronald Reagan the pass. I've talked to the folks that were in the White House. They literally kept him compartmentalized. When he started trying to dig into it, that's when they shot him.
There's no question about it. First of all, Hinckley did not shoot the bullet that hit Reagan. As I will show in my upcoming book, there's a second shooter. Sure. There's so much we have not been told.
Well, they had dinner with Hinckley a few days before.
There's so many more.
The Bushes did.
There's so many more connections.
That was in the Denver Post.
There's so many more connections between Hinckley and the Bushes. There's an immediate struggle by the Bush people for control of the football. immediately while Reagan is incapacitated. Here's what people don't
And then Alexander Haig runs out and says, I've got it, I'm in control.
Well, here's what's interesting. Bush pressured Reagan to sign a secret transfer of power agreement. Haig was opposed. Ed Meese, the Attorney General, was opposed. Weinberg, the Secretary of Defense. Every single member of the Reagan cabinet was opposed.
Sure, that's what I heard. People made fun in the Bush system of Haig, but Haig was actually saying, no, I've got it, you don't have it.
Right.
Because they were trying to get it, right?
So what happens here is Reagan signs this secret transfer of power agreement that says that in the event of the president being incapacitated, here's what will happen. And as soon as he signs, 6 days later, there's an attempt on his life by a man associated with the Bush family. Now, all 5 of Hinckley's shots are accounted for. None of them hit Reagan. There's a second gunman. You can clearly see him in the pictures in my next book. I lay out the entire Bush connection to the Reagan assassination.
Well, I want to sell your books on our store, too. I want to carry them all. In fact, I knew who you were. I've met you before. I don't know why I wasn't thinking get you on, because, I mean, I know a lot of your amazing work. And then Richard Reeves, thank God, one of my friends and does some work with us, called up and said, don't you want to get this guy on? You're writing articles about him.
Yeah.
So I really want to thank you for coming in.
I appreciate being here.
What's crazy is I've done all the research myself, but you forget so much of it. You're here spewing it out. You've got it documented in your book. You start thinking of all the stuff the Bushes and the Clintons have done. They're like James Bond villains.
Oh, they're worse. They're worse because look, this is what we call elite deviants. The Bushes and the Clintons, they can lie, they can steal, they can do drugs, they can traffic drugs, they can have their own email server, they can misuse classified documents, they can have people murdered, they can be involved in epic financial fraud, and they pay no price. The laws don't apply to the Bushes or the Clintons. That's why I'm for Trump. We have to change this. It's time for these criminals to be brought to justice.
The question is, if Trump's for real, which I believe you that he thinks he's for real, certainly he's better than Hillary, they're going to come after him. And you said they're going to claim mafia ties. I mean, that's, talk about the pot calling the kettle black.
Yeah, plus he has just tripled up his personal security. As you may know, he's been afforded Secret Service protection. That kind of bothers me, if you want to know
you
the
don't
truth.
want that.
I don't think you do. I think, A, they're spying for the government, and B, you don't know that you're safe in their hands. But, and they asked me not
And I'm not saying the average guy's bad, but that's usually how they get you. They've got their shadow specter operatives, to use a popular term, Hydra, whatever you want to call it. They've got their operatives in every major agency.
And there's no question about that. So, look, I do think, wait till Trump starts talking about monetary reform, because I know his views on monetary reform. And the printing press money that we keep churning out.
Can you give us any little secrets? Or I guess
yeah, he's a hard money man. He thinks it's time to look at gold. I can tell you that right now. Trump understands that the bankers have gone crazy and that the Federal Reserve is, is not provided for in our government.
Well, it seems like he is getting more informed all the time. When he went after Jeb on 9/11, and then I was told by another person that knows him that, no, he knows what's going on. Now you're telling me, and it's on record, used to be his campaign head. This is wild.
Well, and we're going to get him in here to do your show because I think you guys will hit it off. He's a truth teller. Now, look, his political interests are not that long, meaning when the country was stronger, he was just focused on building his business and his brand. The man is, above all, a patriot. He's giving up the greatest life in the world. I mean, he's got a beautiful family. He's got a luxury existence. He can play golf every afternoon on the greatest golf course in the world, which he built. He's climbed every business mountain you can climb in terms of great development, great hotels, great businesses. He's got an international billion-dollar company. He's met more world leaders face-to-face, one-on-one than anybody else running for president. People find that interesting. But he doesn't
want a new Cold War with Putin.
No, he understands that there's a whole culture, as you know, Alex, of endless war. They're always trying to sell you on war. He thinks, for example, Lindsey Graham, he thinks this guy's a jerk. And he called him out as a jerk. Lindsey was all over him for campaign contributions. Oh, Donald, here's my personal cell phone number. Anytime you need anything, just call me. As you may remember, Trump called it out on national television.
Yeah.
So, no, look, I think he's the real deal. I can tell you he is unscripted and uncontrolled, which means that the political establishment cannot control him.
Boy, they're going to come after him, I think, probably with the same thing they came after Reagan with.
Well, they've already tried. I mean, they've tried first to discredit him. Remember, they said, oh, after his immigration comments, he's going to crash and burn. Then after he took on John McCain, he's going to crash and burn. Then they said that he's not going to show up for the debates. There's no way he'll show up for the debates. After every debate, he went up. So I think the guy is fearless. I think he's having the time of his life.
And then Carson's blowing himself up in front of everybody.
I can't figure out the Carson thing out. It's I just don't see him having the strength. Look, the job is chief executive. Trump is a guy who's run a multi-billion-dollar international company with hundreds of thousands of employees. He's a manager, and he could better manage the country. I don't think you need to know the name of every obscure rebel Islamic fanatic leader. All you need to know is who the good guys and the bad guys are. Wouldn't it be nice to have a president of the United States who put the United States government?
Well, I know Trump has said don't back ISIS, which our government's been doing, and then he supports taking them out, and he supports the Russians. He says, great, let the Russians pay for it. I mean, that's a perfect plan. Well, if you get somebody else to take them out, that's even better.
Let's look at it historically. There's only one man running for president in this election who was opposed to the Iraq war, who said it was an enormous mistake, and that's Donald Trump.
That is true. Both parties were for it.
Yeah, even Bernie Sanders, you know, who says he's a democratic socialist, which is like being a meat-eating vegetarian. I mean, you're either a socialist or you believe in democracy. You can't believe in both. They're not consistent.
You think Bernie Sanders is just really stupid? Or is he evil?
Actually, I think he's worse. He's a true believer. No, he's a true believing socialist. He believes in the state and can state control of our lives.
Even though it never works anywhere.
Right, because his solution is simple. The government's going to do everything for you. He just doesn't mention the 85% tax rate that he has in mind.
And that always select insider groups are basically exempt and consolidate power. And that's what socialists don't get. The same people that have gamed our system now are going to game a socialist system even worse. Don't they understand that?
No, and what's interesting, of course, is I did a book signing here in Austin last night. Night before last, and we had a really great turnout at Brave New Books, which is a great little freedom-oriented bookshop. I think you've been there.
Yep.
Half the people there were Bernie Sanders people because they know that Hillary is not a liberal or a progressive. She's a whore for Wall Street. She'll be where for whatever the money is.
They're the ones that set up all the derivatives under Clinton.
Right. So the left will buy her. It's not that she's a true believer. She's just buyable. The Soroses of this world can buy her. She believes in nothing. So just as the Bushes are not conservatives, they're crony capitalists. The Clintons are really crony capitalists, but they'll be bought by the big government, the big business interests of the left. So even those people know that she's inherently evil and she must be stopped.
We're going to go to break and come back with a few politically correct phone calls for this segment and the next till about 5 after. And then you're going to be on the Nightly News tonight. Really want to get you on the show more often because everything you're saying from my own research is dead on, but you say it so eloquently. But what are other big tidbits that you, I don't want to say talking points, but points you had in your mind you wanted to make when you got here that you'd like to make in the next 3 minutes?
Well, I guess the largest single one is that, look, I was a Republican my entire life, and I had great sentimental attachment to the Republican Party of Barry Goldwater. That was the small government, personal freedom, keep the government out of your business, out of your bedroom.
That's the Ron Paul Republican.
Right. They barely exist anymore. Unfortunately, both parties have morphed into one party. It's the party of endless war. It's the party of erosion of our civil liberties. It's the party of massive debt and more borrowing. It's the party of high taxes on working people, but the hedge fund managers on Wall Street, they pay virtually nothing. So it's very hard for me. I'm a registered libertarian at this point, although there's a lot of folks there that I think are nuts too. The problem here is that the old Republican Party will only be worth fighting for if we have a leader within it. I'll probably switch back to the Republican Party to vote for Donald Trump in next year's primaries because he's the first candidate I've seen who I'm actually enthusiastic about. I've been trying to get him to run for president since 1988 when I took him to New Hampshire to speak to the Portsmouth, New Hampshire Chamber of Commerce. Vice President Bush had been there the week before, had 500 people. Donald Trump went, we had 2,800 people. This is 1988.
Sure. I don't want to get any infighting going on, but I know you know Glenn Beck. He says a lot of good things. We support most of his work. He doesn't like Donald Trump. And I understand some of the reasons because of his past political activities, just being a businessman in New York when Hillary was a senator. But, I mean, so far, he is saying the right things, and he's better than the other candidates.
Yeah, look, I like Glenn, and I look forward to asking him, what his beef is with Donald Trump. People do evolve politically. I don't think Trump was all that politically aware or interested when the country was stronger and he was building his business. He is right. He's played the game. If you're a businessman, if you don't put campaign contributions into the pockets of the politicians, they don't even listen to you. It's not that you're buying favors. You can't even buy an audience, and you have an obligation when you have thousands of people working for you to get your point of view in front of government. So sure, he has a relationship. And frankly, his attitude was, we have a federal limit on donations. So the first 10 politicians who walk in, give them the maximum, send them on their way. They're all worthless anyway. And now when they show up asking for money, say, oh, I'd love to help you, but I've already hit my legal maximum.
Well, I know this. If we did have a president that wasn't actively trying to put us into world government and the TPP, it'd be like untying a boat from the dock when the engine's on. We are tied up. I mean, they're fighting to keep us politically and financially suppressed to control us. All you got to do is cut that out and we'll explode. Well, Roger Stone, RogerStone.com's our guest, really interesting fella. And back when Trump was considering running on his exploratory committee, he was the head of his campaign. And so I'll hold you to it. I don't think we really even tried to get Trump on. We should really push to do that. We shouldn't think there are guests too big to get on the show. We've had a lot of big guests, obviously, on over the years. That's a no-brainer. I think we actually have tried, but it's hard with somebody on such a small campaign staff to get through to them.
Next, I will try to set that up. I think he'd have a good time, and I think you'd enjoy talking to him. You guys would hit it off because he is very upset about the direction of the country. He's given up a lot to make this race, but he wants to make America great again, and trust me, he's the real deal.
Well, I hope you're right. We'll certainly find out if he gets elected and then gets in there. I know this. People are really counting on him, so if he gets in there, he better deliver. Of course, they could just let everything fall apart once he gets in, which is kind of the timeline, and then blame him for what happens.
I think they're going to have their hands full. This guy is a take-charge guy. He's an optimist. There's nothing he can't do. Look, he's a Wharton graduate. He's very smart. He knows exactly what's going on here. He's sick of the whole political correct agenda. He understands that freedom is on the ropes.
And he's saying that gun-free zones are places for crazy people to go kill.
The guy, he'll just be carrying. He's carrying. Anytime you see him, trust me, brother, he's carrying. He's had a concealed carry permit in New York, which they don't give out. They're very hard to get.
And the media acted like it's weird that he'd want to have a gun when he's a target.
How many death threats do you think he gets a week? I mean, it's extraordinary. And they ask us not to talk about it.
Well, that shows how warped it is.
Yeah, exactly.
But he gets a lot of death threats?
Oh, well, sure, because he's speaking out on a lot of controversial subjects. So,
but you do say he's tripled his security.
He's tripled his security. He himself carries. Both his sons are gun enthusiasts, very active hunters and gun enthusiasts. They both carry.
I love it.
You know, they're strong believers in the Second Amendment.
Oh, if he was president, he'd carry. Well, you know, Obama's not carrying anything, but maybe a...
Reagan carried. Reagan had a holster, you know, on his calf. He was carrying about 80% of the time. When he was running for president and when he was president.
Well, you're crazy if you don't.
Yep.
Everybody's like, hey, let the cops have guns. Well, what about us?
Yeah, I'm sure he wishes he was carried when Hinckley tried to take him out, or Hinckley and others tried to take him out.
Just like the Sirhan crap. AJ called in earlier. I had to put him on hold, and he mentioned going to this Red Robin hamburger place. I'm at the police state, and they've got where you order your food from a computer. It's got a camera watching you. I saw a Chili's ad where it's got a camera, so he was going to finish his story. So what happened when you discovered this?
Well, basically, I asked the waitress, you know, what's the deal with the camera inside there? And she's like, what camera? Looked at the television screen, and then she said, whoa, there's a camera in there? I had no idea. You could just turn it away if you want. So, Alex, from what she told me, I basically garnered two ideas in my head of what she knew. She either lied to me or is just completely stupid and unawake. I hope she lied.
I think it's not even stupid. They just don't care. They're in a trance. I appreciate your call. I'm glad you finished the story. But we're going to go out to a Chili's. That's the place I know is doing it. I mean, talk about 1984.
Yeah, it's interesting. What it means is you got to have a piece of masking tape when you go get a burger. That's the thing.
What does Trump think about the whole NSA thing?
I think he's opposed to government spying. I mean, he is, you know, we have been very concerned when I was there about whether his own phone calls, his own email were being looked at. He's obviously got an enormous number of advisors in business and around the globe who are giving him uncensored information that you'd never get from the government or the New York Times, shall we say. So I
talk about a really unfettered intelligence stream.
Yeah, he would be a giant champion of the First Amendment. And I think he is very wary of the Patriot Act.
Well, compare him to political correctness. Hillary agreeing we should ban words. Trump says you're all a bunch of crazy people.
Yes.
I mean, it's definitely good. We're going to come back, take a few more calls from Ronnie and others. Zach in Montana on the other side with our guest, RogerStone.com. Get the new book about this Clinton sex crime machine. It is the Clintons' war on women. Well, I'm excited. I want to get him on. Let's go ahead and go to Zach in Montana. Roger Stone of RogerStone.com is our guest. Really exciting to have him here with us. Go ahead, Zach.
Yes, actually, I had called a while ago and just was kind of...
No, we're going over politically correct calls now. I apologize I made you hold, but a guest came in, but he's willing to comment on it. Tell your politically correct story.
Well, I guess I had 2 points. I studied math and engineering and physics in college, and kind of what I discovered was in those classes, most of your professors, you could characterize them as being, conservative, and none of them would ever come out and say they believed in God, but you could tell that they would, privately say, yeah, well, it's my opinion that such things do exist. But as soon as, part of the school that I graduated from was a liberal arts university, so you had to take some what I would call cream puff classes. And as soon as you get into those classes, it was just a totally different feel, much more political indoctrination in those types of classes. And what I also kind of discovered was, I took a lot of those towards the end of my, academic career. So I focused mostly on math and physics. But once they, part of your requirements was to construct a reasonable argument. But when you got into these classes, you could just sit there and pick these guys' arguments apart because they're not even following what, you're being taught in your physics and math classes. And it just...
Well, sure. Look at now what they teach in Common Core. 2 + 2 = 5, literally. That's trying to sabotage children's minds. Great point, Zach. Appreciate you holding to tell us that. And even if I don't get to you guys, coming up, David Knight is going to David Knight's to the Nightly News tonight. It's Paul Watson doing the 4th hour. I want to go to these other callers, but I've got to give you the last word here. What are you going to be covering? I mean, you'll obviously recap on the Nightly News tonight, but what other areas are you going to be covering tonight on the news?
Well, look, I think it's important to bore down on the Bushes. Your caller just raised it. This is what is not known. You know who the partners are in Obama phone? That would be Carlos Slim, the Mexican billionaire, and his partner, Jeb Bush.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh, that's right. Jeb's involved. Jeb's the Obama phone moneymaker.
Exactly. So before he became a candidate for president, Jeb transferred his stock in TracFone, the company that has the contract from the feds for Obama phone, to his son so he wouldn't have to disclose it publicly. Unfortunately, the woman who was the notary for the stock transfer happened to be a Liberty Republican, and she kept a copy of the documents.
Good.
So the point, of course, here is that Jeb has made money on Obamacare. He made money on Obama phones, and now he hopes to make a fortune on Common Core because his brother is deeply invested in Common Core, the Common Core curriculum, the Common Core textbooks. So the Bush family, they're profiteers, and they make money off of their policies.
Kind of like Grandpa did with the Nazis.
Exactly.
There really is no end to these people.
No, and they're all the same. So this is why Barbara Bush says, "Oh, Bill Clinton is the 5th Bush brother," and George W. says, "Bill Clinton is my brother from another mother," which makes Hillary like my sister-in-law. This is disgusting.
Incestuous.
Yeah, no, and they're all in it together. They're making millions and millions of dollars out of the big state policies that they push.
And they're just the corrupt managers for all the multinationals that are buying and selling our country like they're pawns on a chessboard. What should we call this interview when it goes up to YouTube and Facebook and other places? I mean, how do we encapsulate what's happening? Author exposes Clinton's crimes against women. I think it's bigger than that. This is a powerful interview.
Yeah, no, I think it is. I think it's 2 things. First of all, it is the hypocrisy of the Clintons and their claims about being advocates for women. And then it's the Bush-Clinton crime syndicate, because that's what they are. They're a crime syndicate.
The Bush-Clinton crime syndicate exposed.
Yep, that's it.
But what I really get people to watch the videos, interesting to have these open discussions with the viewers and listeners, is Trump insider exposes Bush's and Clinton's.
That works for me.
Because then who knows? I got to come up with some headlines here. Hey, Paul Watson's coming up. I apologize to the callers. I tried to hold you over. Most talk shows would just hang up on you when a guest came on. I tried to get to all of you. Watson, I'm sure we'll get to you on your politically correct stories. It's one of his top issues. He's even worse than I am obsessing on it in a good way, so he's coming up. I'm not gonna sit here and take it anymore.
Join InfoWars Tuesday, November 10th for live debate coverage. Since their last face-off, the GOP candidates have been picketed outside of sketch comedy shows, caught lying about their school records, and others have been banished to the kids' table. What stupid questions await the remaining contenders when they meet again?
Donald Trump, are you a comic book villain? Ben Carson, can you do math? John Kasich, will you insult two people over here?
We have $19 trillion in debt. We have people out of work. We have ISIS and Al-Qaeda attacking us. And we're talking about fantasy football? Can we stop?
Can pundits put aside their disdain for the participants and focus on real issues? How many times can Ronald Reagan be name-dropped in 2 hours? Will someone wear a Hillary for Prison t-shirt? All will be revealed Tuesday, November 10th, starting at 7 p.m. Central, as InfoWars enters into another episode of Political Science Theater 3K.